from time to time. We've had makers, well, they'll be telling us their process, and then halfway through it, they go, "Oh shit, cut this out because I don't tell anybody this," and that means we've gotten very comfortable with our guest, right? But
Right.
what I was thinking about though, while I was sitting here waiting for the interview to start, was on your videos on Instagram, you're always working with silver and making all kinds of things. And I know that you can absorb silver, and people use silver as a health issues and stuff like that. But did you ever hear of there was this cult leader in Colorado? Her name was like Mother God or something, and she died. They found her mummification, like her mummified remains, like a few months later. But the diet and her followers were feeding her colloidal silver to the point that she died of a colloidal silver overdose. Yeah. So I didn't realize, like when I was a kid, even I remember a friend of ours was getting treated for Lyme's disease with silver. If like someone who works with silver with their hands has to worry about too much into their body. I don't know if that's something that's ever crossed your mind, but
I can't say I know that like bodies absorb, we're sponges, right? We absorb everything that's around us and near to us. I can assure you, Ben, I do not take a spoonful of my silver dust and, throw it back with my coffee in the morning. But I mean, actually, even the shirt from Lululemon has silver in it because it's like what do they call that? Like a scent, I don't know, repellent. It helps things like a microbial thing. But I do know like certain people absorb copper way easier as well. I can't say I've ever felt any effects. I think you would really have to kind of do what she did and just ridiculously overdose yourself on heavy metal because we're exposed to heavy metals constantly, honestly, around us all the time. But I do wonder one kind of funny thing. So my daughter, and then we're pregnant with another that's coming around Valentine's Day, but she has this weird thing that she like, kids like to chew and suck on all kinds of things, but she really likes metal. And I don't know if that came from like in utero, me working in the shop, and then she come out and it's weird. Like if she finds like silver beads, like she'll chew on those. So I don't know. Maybe there's something to be said for that. And maybe it's not great, but so far I haven't died, Ben. So we'll carry on.
well, that is a traditional thing to give a baby a silver spoon, right? Because I
And maybe
often
there's
wonder,
something
like silver jewelry, if there's something beyond just the look of it. If it's been passed down as a health thing as well as for looks.
well, like
Interesting
with
they give
your wrist
babies a
right there,
silver
you have
spoon, and I
a
think that has to
copper.
do with health.
Right. Because yeah, you have a copper cuff on. They say it helps with arthritis, and some people actually can, I think, get too much copper. Like I said, it absorbs more. But a lot of guys, and especially in the horse world, all wear copper cuffs. My brother-in-law does. All kinds of people do. So I think there's something to be said. Maybe if nothing else, even if it is a good placebo, I mean, what does it matter if it's helping and you feel like it's helping? Cool, go for it.
No, it's interesting. That's a whole other podcast, I guess, sometime. But I started wearing the copper bracelet to look cool. Like I'll be totally honest, I did it to look cool, and it wasn't until a few months into it that I ran into a guy. He was like an accountant at church, and he wore one. So I was like, cool. Like he's not a cowboy. So I was talking to him about it, and he was telling me the benefits of it for arthritis. And he had like tennis elbow,
Right.
that helped him. And I started to think about it. And sure enough, like I had always had kind of a hitch in this shoulder, and I don't have that anymore. Um, I have no idea what it's contributing. Maybe it's just the fact it's a metal object. Joe and I were in Texas a couple years ago at the NFR, and some lady was doing the mag bracelets. And
Yep.
I argue with her, but sure enough, I mean, it did change something about my body. So I have no idea, but it's interesting. And especially metals like silver and copper, and just how it affects your body. And like, because when I was a kid, I remember I used to work in this wood shop with a friend of ours, and we bought a cedar. And I remember him saying, like, don't do it too much because I have an old friend who only worked with cedar, and he breathed in a lot of the cedar dust because I believe cedar wood is also a natural like fuel, and it
Okay.
of his brain cells. And it's happened to a lot of old carpenters that strictly work with cedar and stay like locked indoors. They'll go crazy a
Right.
little bit. They lose some brain cells. So
Man, I guess we
that's something
all
to
gotta be
think about,
careful.
huh?
I don't need any more help losing brain cells. I think they say for each baby you have, you lose like 50% of the brain cells you have remaining. So I'm down. We're down to 50% already. We don't need any more gone.
Maybe you're getting all the positive attributes, because you said you're not eating it like the crazy cult leader. So yeah, just crazy rabbit hole. But I was thinking about that because that's the only person on Instagram I see constantly working with silver with their hands. And I'm not sure if that's like beneficial or negative. So I'm glad.
I can't say I felt
Well,
any
glad you're
benefits.
here.
Yeah, we're feeling good. Clara came out great. There's no, she doesn't have like a third arm growing out of her back. So I think we're doing okay so far.
So you said you've mostly been on the West Coast. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Central California. I don't know if you guys are familiar with California at all, but Fresno is the nearest like big town. It's gotten really big, but we're an hour and a half straight west of there. Kalinga is the name of the town, and I grew up about 20 minutes outside of Kalinga. So we're right in the mountain range between like the San Joaquin Valley and the Salinas Valley. We're right in the middle there. And so I grew up, my mom and dad, we have a home business. My dad's a saddle maker and a bit and spur maker and tool maker and hardware maker. Pretty much he can make anything, which is extremely frustrating because he's good at all of it. And so grew up in a home business. Me and my brother were homeschooled. So we got to go to all the trade shows with my parents growing up. We traveled a ton internationally as well, just because my dad would go over and teach in different countries, and then we would come over after and get to travel around. So really an idyllic childhood. We had so many fun things that we got to do because of that lifestyle. So grew up, yeah, Central California. I like to call it the sane part of California. California is a beautiful state, and there's so many cool parts of it. And there still is so many cool parts of it. So my parents still live down there, and I lived there all my life. Rolling golden hills, bunch of oak trees, and the best produce that you could ask for. So can't complain there.
Wow. So it really was like a perfect storm for you growing up to run something like the Be a Maker School, huh?
Yes. So I I always laugh. Capitalism and entrepreneurship, I'm pretty sure was like breathed into me in the crib, just growing up in a home business. And my family, I would say, was pretty unique in the way that my mom like didn't have a separate job in town. I say that in quotations because everyone usually you'll hear a lot of makers that only get to make full time because the other partner, whether it be the wife or the husband, whatever, generally has a whole other job, right? That's helping contribute to that income for the family. So my parents are pretty unique in that way that they really figured out how to make it work to both be at home, homeschool us, and to provide us with a wonderful lifestyle. But growing up, yes, I think I started selling horse cookies at 4 years old was my first entrepreneurial gig. And I think it was more that it was, a cute girl with blonde curly pigtails than it was a good product, but you got to start somewhere. So we started there, and my parents have always been extremely encouraging in any kind of business endeavor. And so me and my brother have always done those kind of things. We've also just been, that was our life, right? We went to trade shows, we helped mom and dad set up and talk to customers and help them find what they need. And so it really kind of just gave that extra footing when I started doing business on my own, that I had a lot of those skills under my belt simply because of how we were raised, which I think I took for granted more when you're younger because you just don't know any different. But I do think that it has definitely been a huge benefit in running my own businesses. I have a silver business where I make jewelry for women who usually kind of have a similar life than I do, stuff that they can wear in the middle of nowhere that just brings them joy. And then I have Be a Maker School, which is an online school for the Western trade. So it's apart from me. I started it in 21. I wanted to teach silverwork, but then I wanted it to be the hub one day so that anyone that wanted to learn a Western trade could come on and they could learn, leatherwork, silverwork, braiding, cinch making, and then we just recently launched a business course specifically aimed towards makers as well. So yes, Joe, I think that whole, upbringing was extremely beneficial. I went to college for pre-physical therapy and business, so nothing to do in the art world or silverwork or anything like that. Um, I think there are some business classes that were helpful, but honestly, as you guys know, just from doing what you do with horses, you're never going to be a great horseman from just watching videos. You have to go out there and actually do the work. And then you figure out what does work and what doesn't work and how hard it is to be with an animal that has a whole other opinion. So you have to figure out how to do business with customers that have opinions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and gosh, how many people get into horses? Or there's a bunch of stuff, not just the like Western arts, but people are like, I'm going to go into business for myself because I can't stand people.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, there's some serious flaws in that logic, because if you're going into business for yourself, you have to deal with the people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I can't, you pretty much, to not deal with people at all, you got to be employed by like a national park or something. I don't know. Like something where you can just be off by yourself for big swaths of time.
No, but that's
Yeah,
really a good
exactly.
point, Joe, and something I've heard from a lot of people, which was part of this business course, is called the business of making. And it really kind of just it brings everything down. There's so much advice in the business world and many different aspects that you can look at. But being a maker, either a single member or a very small member shop, requires a different set of skills, and to kind of use just certain aspects of the business to really make yourself a profitable and sustainable business. So it takes a lot of those things and just kind of distills it down into the most applicable things that we need to know to get started running a business. But I have heard from so many maker friends that I stopped making because I just couldn't deal with the customers, like you said. And it's funny because I've also heard, I got into business because I just don't want to deal with people. However, you disregard the fact that when you are working for someone else, there's generally kind of a team of people that get to help deal with those customers. It's not all on one person. It's not all on one person's back. So when you do start making things, you have to be really cognizant of your time and of how much attention you give to each person, because your main business, how you make money in my trade, is actually making things, right? If I'm not in my shop and not actually creating with my hands, then I'm not making any money. But I also have to deal with customers. So you need to deal with them in a professional, respectful way, because word of mouth is huge. As we know, you guys found out about me through word of the mouth, right? In the Western industry, especially, it is so, so important. But you need to just deal with them respectfully and be very aware of your time, or else you'll spend all your time trying to work on this one aspect and never actually get into the shop. Or you'll do all this time building things in the shop and never actually get out there and market your work so that you can bring some money home at the end of the day. So dealing with people, even if you live where I do, which I am 80 miles from the nearest town, I'm 20 miles from the nearest town of 5 people, which isn't really a town, you still have to deal with people. And it's made it a lot easier being online, but that brings a whole other slew of issues being online, because your customers, you have to be so aware of the person that you're putting out there online, because that's who they're getting to see. That's like them meeting you in person, getting to shake your hand. So if you're not aware of it and putting attention into making that the best you can, it's probably not going to go so great for your business either.
So you, yeah, to start the maker school, did you had you already had that kind of as plan all along, or have you encountered very specific things that caused you to start that here in the last couple of years?
So I think in one big way, COVID was a huge catalyst for making it kind of come to fruition, right? Because everyone was online, everyone was at home, they all wanted something to do. And in the maker world and in online space, 2021 was like gangbusters, man. It was a hell of a year because people were just like spending money. Like the reality of the situation hadn't quite, I think, solidified in people's brains. They were just kind of like, oh, let's just like go and spend some money, like the world's ending, whatever. But it more than that, I've always enjoyed teaching because my dad was such a good teacher. He was so phenomenal about sharing about the trade, because he grew up in the generation where people didn't share what they did. And he kind of vowed to himself that he wouldn't be that kind of person going forward. And so I was very blessed to grow up in a household that things were shared. And in my generation, generally, there's just so much information out there. So we're very, very fortunate that that information is there. Now, bringing it into the online space, was just kind of a simple decision, because people have been done, books and DVDs for forever on instructional ways of how to do the Western trades, but bringing it into the online space was a little bit new, at least for the Western world. So 2021, we've been working on it for probably a year and a half before that. And I'd slowly kind of upped my teaching abilities in different ways, from teaching smaller workshops to teaching week-long classes at GRS Tools, which is the company that makes all the engraving equipment I use. So God had slowly placed opportunities for me to kind of build that repertoire as a teacher before we actually launched the class. Now, I knew from the get-go, I didn't just want it to be me, because I'm just one silversmith in a whole big ocean of amazing makers. And I don't think I know everything by any means. So I wanted it to be open to growing apart from me, with me, but apart from me, so that we could have all these amazingly talented makers on this school. But from the very get-go, a huge thing for me was growing it with integrity. So not only do I ask instructors who are phenomenal at their craft, but also just really, really great people who I can trust are going to teach their students with respect as well. Because again, that's huge. We've all had those bad encounters of a teacher or an instructor throughout our lives that really made us feel bad about ourselves, or just wasn't a positive experience. So that was a really big thing. So we launched in 2021, July of 2021, with my first flagship course, which was the fundamentals of silversmithing. That's a skill-based course on teaching you all of the essential things you kind of need to know to do this kind of silver work that I do. So how to use a jeweler saw, how to use a torch, how to form things, how to drill things, polish them, all different things like that. So that was the first course, and we have slowly grown from there, and included other trades as we've grown. And I can go into the trades and the specific courses if you guys would like me to.
Other question I have is, because like grew up, like you had access to people probably, whether they were craftsmen or even horsemen, or probably people in other skills as well, they were practitioners, but they were also teachers. So it probably seemed like that was probably something that was kind of modeled to you. But when you come, like, it is interesting because we've talked to several people on here, and I'm curious your thoughts. Is that so many of the older masters, whether it was horses or it was saddle making or bit makers, spur makers, silversmiths, why do you think it was that they were so careful about who taught? Because it could be a real problem, right? These guys pass away and then they don't pass on their knowledge. Um, Corrected, today you can pull out your phone and you just get bombarded with, you have like stuff like school where you like, they're just trying to get anybody to start a group, anything. And it's like, okay, well, maybe that's a little too much teaching.
Sorry, you cut
But
out, Ben,
it seems
just a
like
little
the
bit.
Did he
older
quit on you?
generation, they really had a problem
There he is.
with, it seems like they really had a hard time passing on their knowledge. And what are your thoughts on why they were so, like, almost secretive, it seems like?
So, I mean, this is only outside looking in, because I grew up in a generation that was pretty fortunate to have that. But I also hear your point about possibly overcorrecting. Now anyone's an expert as soon as they turn a camera on, unfortunately. In my opinion, like, looking at maybe why they didn't share things, it was a school of hard knocks. We weren't such an interconnected world. There wasn't so many teachers. So they themselves had to learn that same way of going and apprenticing underneath someone, of spending the time. And it was like a hard earned trade. So they were less likely to be generous with that, because I don't think they were themselves showed the generosity of that knowledge. It was really like, you got to work at it and show me that you want to do this for real, which I do think there's some merit to that. And I think we can still utilize some of those thoughts of really, like, if you want to work at this, it's never, I don't like the saying like, oh, find something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Honestly, I think that's bullcrap. You will work your butt off, but you will also find a lot of meaning and a lot of fulfilling times working for yourself. But it's not like it's just this easy breezy thing, because if something fails, it's on you. If something goes good, it's also on you. But it's a lot more of a roller coaster of emotions working for yourself than not. But I think overall, it was just the school of hard knocks that they had to kind of fight to learn those things as well. So they think, why would you not have to fight to learn the same thing I did? Why should I make it easier for you than it was for me? So that's, I don't know, maybe that's kind of dumbed down too much, but that's kind of my thought on why they might have not been so generous in sharing.
Well, and that might help with my next question, which is, you know, say I wanted to get into silversmithing, I could probably go on YouTube and a few videos, right? Now I'm not trying away from your be a maker school, but this is I'm gonna this up and ask you what you think. So you could get on YouTube and find some videos, or someone can enroll in a school like you have. And what kind of benefit does someone get from joining an actual online school versus like taking advantage of like this just crazy amount of information, and all with intentionally like building this be a maker school, and you have other people that are contributing as well? Is there an element where you try to, like we just talked about, the older makers who way they tried to instill a sense of ship into the skill, like you've got to go out, you've got to figure it out, you've got to beat down my door to learn this from me? Are you able to implement that into your school in the sense where you think about, you're giving information to your students, but you're trying to also make them appreciate it, I guess, more than if you just had like made a YouTube channel and had a bunch of videos out there? I know those are like kind of two questions, but I guess the main question is, what is of someone going and joining your school versus YouTube? And is there, a more built-in sense of that, you know, like your difficulty or hardship, whatever it is that the it takes to learn that skill? Are you able to build that into your program at all? I think so.
That's genuinely never happened before.
Recording for a minute. Just let us know. I heard that beep. I heard the beep before. I think that was your notification telling you that it was doing that. Okay, so we're back into the episode now. Difficulty, but I think we'll pick right back up here.
So I do have a question for you in all this that we've been talking about. Where did your dad's education come from? If he was so accomplished, and it sounds like he's still doing a lot of cool things with his career, where did he learn all this stuff?
Yep, absolutely. So he went to saddle making school in Texas, but then the majority of his, I would say, learnings, Joe, came from Chuck Storms in Alberta, in Calgary, Alberta, which is where he really learned, saddle making and a lot of those things. And from there, like Chuck, wasn't necessarily, a bit maker or anything like that. He's learned since then. Some of those things he learned on his own, but I would say the biggest kind of catalyst to his career was Chuck Storms in Alberta. He spent, I'm not positive how long there, but quite a lot of time. So that was a huge mentor for my dad in learning his trade. But he's one of those guys that he just never stops learning, Joe. He's always researching. I mean, still to this day, he cannot go to bed early. Like midnight is early for him. And he just doesn't need that much sleep, but he just goes on and he finds all kinds of stuff that he's just constantly researching and constantly learning. So I do got to credit my dad. He's never been that person that's like, oh, I feel like I'm pretty solid in my career, that now I'm kind of done learning. He is just, yeah, always pursuing knowledge, which is admirable for sure.
That's cool. Well, let me ask you this, because it's, to me, he's kind of like an oddity, right? Like that he kind of ventures into a lot of the trades. Do you think it's one of those things like, if you're a good if you're a good bit and spur maker and someone like picked you up and put you in saddle making world, that person could be a good saddle maker because of how they are? Or is it like some people are jacks of all the trades, and then other people's it's like this is their one thing, and they they kind of not have to stay in that niche, but like it maybe not be as successful somewhere else? Because there's kind of that in the horse world a little bit. It's like this guy, he was like starting colts, and then he starts showing cutting horses, right? And then he starts going over here, and there's some guys who are like, that guy's just handy, like whatever he spends the time to get better at, he's going to get better at. And then there's other people who are like, he's found his thing and his niche, and I don't know if you could put him over here and that person be just as successful. So do you see like across all of these crafts, like what like attributes that make a good maker versus a bad maker, or a successful maker, I guess you'd say?
So I think it's a good question. And honestly, in my brain, I think you can learn anything you want to. You may not ever feel like you're the best in that trade. There are some people, I do know people you're talking about, Joe, that is just like, oh my God, do they fail at anything? Like, seriously, everything they try is like touched by God, I'm pretty sure. I'm not one of those people by far, not one of those people. Wish I was. I do think that for some reason, when you start making things, making another thing just seems to be easier. Like once you start creating with your brain and creating with your hands, doing other trades seems to just come a little bit more naturally. I'm not going to say that you're going to be ridiculously proficient at it right away, but you're more interested in pursuing other things generally. I have been told by a very, very well known maker, and still respect the work that he does. I just don't agree with his opinion that I will never be good at something unless I pick only one thing. I just simply don't believe it. I think that you can be good at many different things, but where you put your time and attention is where you're going to usually excel. So it depends if you want to be known for only one thing or if you want to be known for kind of crossing those bridges and doing many different things. We only have so much time in the day, and all of us have different, areas of attention that are drawing us away. So for right now, I have young kids, right? Well, one baby and another baby on the way, but I just think you definitely can do many things. There's some people that will excel at all of those things. However, some of those people that seem to go so hard into all of these areas sometimes forget other things like family life, right? Other things like paying attention to your spouse, paying attention to your faith, paying attention to your children. So that depends on where you want to put your attention. If you want to be that person that wants to go solo and wants to go really hard, all the power to you, man. But like trying to have a life that you have divided attention can make that a little bit difficult. But usually I've seen a lot of people say, for instance, they are a saddle maker and they're like, man, I really want to find some really cool silver work, conchos and candle plates to put on my saddles. And I can't really find what I'm looking for in the industry. And they generally start making it themselves. So I know a lot of people that do that. And especially I think like bit and spur makers end up doing some silver work, some jewelry, and saddle makers end up doing some other leather goods, maybe leggings or strap goods or wallets, whatever it may be, to kind of fill those areas of their business. But I do think once you start making again with your head and with your hands, it makes creating other things a little bit easier too.
Well, okay. So follow up to that, is there any sort of business motivated decision to specialize versus stay diversified?
So another good question. I have known, makers that maybe try to do too many things at once and it's confusing to the customer. I think that possibly when you're starting out, if you can choose, kind of one trade, let's work on building some customer base in that trade before we branch out and add these other aspects to it. I think that can be beneficial. I think messaging and marketing to customers, if you start and you're like, oh, I am a horse trainer, but also I have a saddle washing business. And then I'm also a farrier. And like, it just dilutes your attention and you maybe don't seem like you're as valuable in one of those areas. Whereas if you can convince customers and people that you do know something about this one area, they're more likely to trust you to put value in another area that you're pursuing later on. So I think that would be what I would say. It doesn't mean you can only ever do one thing in my brain, but maybe don't dilute your attention too much at the get-go by doing cross stitch and also saddle making and also baking and trying to sell all of it. That's kind of a weird business, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and from a strictly like bottom line standpoint too, if you build up a customer base in one area, that might give you the leeway to like have time to experiment and get better at something else because you're not just basically week to week trying to sell this thing, then sell this thing, then sell this thing, right? You have steady business coming from something, and then maybe you take a couple hours out of the day to venture into your new craft.
Yeah. And I'll talk about someone in particular, Kaylee Klein. She's Magpie West Leather Co. She's also an instructor on BAMS. She has an introduction to leatherworking course, but she is so dang artistic. So she does leather work that has, kind of more traditional floral carving, but then like painted scenes as well in it. And she took her artistic ability and has kind of led her customers and pursued like some watercolors in her career that are absolutely stunning. And they're taking the same kind of style of artwork that she was putting on her leather work, but putting it into kind of traditional artwork setting. And because she has that customer base that already loves what she does, because she does such amazing work, it made it a lot easier to kind of offer that in addition to the leather work. And like you said, it creates a little bit of margin that you have those customers that appreciate what you do. So now I can pursue this other thing with the hope and kind of hopeful expectation that they will follow me into that new area. I always say that I really think part of your job as a maker and entrepreneur is you need to create items that, yes, your customers want, but also lead customers to the type of work that you are drawn to yourself and want to create. So you're creating things that do bring you joy in the moment, but every artist's kind of style will morph and change as different life experiences happen to them, and you got to be aware of just kind of leading your customer into that area if you want to change it. You can't just change it overnight. That can sometimes be a little bit of, I don't know, a harsh adjustment for your customers. Who's like, whoa, like this doesn't look like your work at all. But if you're slowly leading them into that area and kind of like holding their hand, like, listen, trust me, I know you've trusted me before with your money, right? You have bought stuff from me. I do want to make this new thing. I'm going to put my same intention and my same process of making that item with quality. It just might look a little bit different because that's things that I'm into. And if you're into it, that passion translates to your customer. So leading the customer is a good thing as well.
Interesting.
All
It's
these things
funny
I
because
never
we were
really
talking
want to
about,
try.
being at the podcast, we were, Elon's name came up because we were talking about Starlink and the Wi-Fi. But I think he's a really good example of that exact trait. I was listening this week to the All In podcast. For our listeners, it's a pretty good podcast. You have Shamoff and a few of the other guys, David Sachs and guys in Silicon Valley, and they've got a good eye for organization, I think. And talking about how Elon will come to a problem and just find one or two things that are causing the major problem, and then just tackle that and work on that, and just consistently do reps on the problem, not all the problems. And even, you would think a guy like that, idea came along, or great idea that would probably work, hey, why wouldn't you just add that to the portfolio of things you're working on? But no, he doesn't. If he's got 6 facets to the business, 6 facets it is, until there's room for a 7th, or until one of the 6 leaves and now there's an opening for a 6th again. And I'm one of the people that really struggle with constantly having new ideas and being kind of led down new paths and going, oh yeah, I could do that and that. That's something I really work on, is like coming back to the middle, back to the basics, and going, no, I've got to work on this one thing. Like, this was my original goal. It's my goal now. It's my goal in the foreseeable future. And that's something I really have to work at, is coming back to before I go on and like start adding to it. Something like in your school, do you talk to the students about that, or do you have someone in your program who, like, it's almost like sports psychology, right? It's like maker psychology, I guess, for those guys. Is that like a topic that you all cover?
That's a good question. I don't know if we specifically cover that question. I tell all the instructors that when we have like the film crew come to do their videos, that I want them to act just like they would if someone was in the shop with them, right? I want it to be very authentic to what their personality is like. So whatever things kind of naturally come up will come up. But I think we've all heard the phrase like, do one thing well, right, before you go on and do these other things. And it is, to me, starting a business, having those ideas, that's the easy part. Like launching the thing, that's kind of the easy part. The maintaining and the improvement of processes, that's the part that I struggle with, that you have to work on if you want to be in business for a while. Like a lot of people, I think we're in such a generation that it's just like boo, boo, boo. Like everything's just like bubbles going everywhere, popping, and there's so much attention. But like having a business that has been in business for decades, for centuries even, that's where I think the respect lies, and really maintaining and keeping those customers. not only like customer acquisition, but customer retention, that's where I think the attention needs to be spent. And it's the unsexy side of business, right? It's not sexy to work on processes. It's not sexy to look at how you're doing business, not just like, oh, I made $100. Woo, like I'm so excited. But okay, how could I make $100 more efficiently with a better customer relationship and a better product at the end of the day? So those things I think are even more important, which have less attention. But Ben, I hear you. Like the ideas is hard. And I think as soon as you have like one good idea, it's way easier to lie in your bed at night and trying to sleep. And then you're just like, Nero. And then I think you need, I don't know what your wife is like, Ben, but my husband is definitely the person that's the grounding, the logical side of the relationship. So he's the person that kind of maybe like helps me, like, maybe you should work on this one. Like, let's focus over here for a while. So I do think that God brings those people into our lives that maybe kind of balance out that ideas popping, because it's wonderful to have ideas, but you do have to focus long enough on idea to make it successful before I think you can move on to another one. Otherwise, I think customers start being like, oh yeah, he's going to launch a new thing. And then in 2 weeks, he's going to be on to something else and not really care if the idea was successful or not.
Absolutely. Yeah, my wife, absolutely. She will like sit me down and be like, hey, what you were working on, like, what are you doing? And I'll even try to stand up for my ideas for a short while. And that doesn't go very well. But yeah, I
God bless.
think for sure, like the amount of stuff sorry,
What's her name? Helen. Thank you, Helen. Good thing she's logical in the relationship.
very logical compared to me. But absolutely, I think, the amount of things we're exposed to, sort of like you're constantly hearing about like all these boats that you feel like you've missed. And then you see all these other boats getting ready to take off and you can't pick which one, because you're inundated with ideas and then you're inundated with advice. Like another thing, actually, my wife tells me all the time is she says, you got to stop reading biographies because all you're doing is just hearing about someone else's life that already happened. And I've always thought about it differently. Like, oh, no, it's cool to hear about what they've done and how they think. But that could be a real trap where you're constantly like hearing about someone else's adventure that already left the dock. And you're worried about all the other opportunities that your own life presents. And it's a very simple saying, but I believe Confucius said, a man who chases two rabbits will catch neither. Two. You're only chasing two, but you can't catch both.
Yeah.
Catch one and then tie it up and come back and catch the other. But it's so hard, not only when you are someone like myself, but then to live in this day and age where there's so much information coming in and it's not even pretty good information. And there's real examples and you can see the actual people who have done it. And it can drive you crazy if you don't stay really vigilant and disciplined to just stick with one thing at a time. Yeah, that's certainly something I work on. And I'm very thankful for the people in my life that always bring it back to that, to say, hey man, what are you doing? So I'm sure that's something that a lot of those young makers, I'm sure that's something they've got to get through. I'm sure in the beginning. I mean, I think some people, I don't know, like, what do you think? Cause you're working with a lot of different people. Do you think more people are kind of, do lots of different things, or do you find that most people do want to stick to one thing and follow it through?
That's a good question. I think the majority of people I see have a trade that they're primarily interested in and start there. They might branch out later, but usually they have like some pretty strong pull in one area. There are a few people. There's a lady named Amanda Arata who is one of those people that is just amazing at everything she does. If Amanda's listening, she's amazing. Amanda Arata, leather and silver. But I think the majority of people generally are pulled in one area and then they might branch out later. But yeah, doing that, the unsexy side of just focusing on something for a while can be really difficult. And I think that's something different as well. In my heart, I want to be running Be a Maker School for as long as God allows me. Usually when you're an entrepreneur, right, you're going to build a business and you're going to sell that business and you're going to move on and create another business. But because the trades is part of my culture and my heritage, I mean, I grew up in a maker family. These are so near and dear to my heart. And the people that we have working with us are so important to me I don't plan on just selling it and moving on. It's something that I really want to become a legacy. And if my kids want to do it, cool. If they don't, that's totally fine. But that's, I think, a little bit different in the entrepreneurial space, that it's not something we're creating with the thought that we're going to be leaving it. We're creating it, and we've got to create it in a way that is sustainable, because I plan on running this while we ranch full time, while we have children, while we do other life things. So I think that's just a little bit different in my, I don't know, in my business model too, than what you would normally see. But Joe, we got to ask, are you the idea guy? Or are you the logical one in a relationship? What's your wife's name, Joe?
My wife's name is Kaylee. I feel like we're pretty, I don't know. I think both of us have both those sides. Like I feel like we've had that conversation, but the roles have been swapped either way.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. I if I had to pick, I think I'm probably a more practical person. So to give you some background on me, I went to school and I also don't use my degree at all, but I have a degree in industrial and systems engineering. So I very much am into like quantitative, like things I can like touch and see and measure.
Right.
And I think that kind of lends myself more to like, I'm going to do this thing and then I'm just going to do this thing until something else presents itself. Not to say that I haven't switched gears several times in my life, but I, my biggest thing, because I see it a lot. Like I've got a guy that works for me right now. I got a couple guys that are in college and they work for me part time. And I feel like I see it in young people a lot where talent is common and consistency is rare, right? Where, and you see it in everything. I mean, people that show horses or professional sports athletes like football players or something. Like, there's a lot of guys who have won a Super Bowl in terms of like people that are in the NFL, but there's very few people that have won more than one Super Bowl, right? And it's not talent that separates people from their peers. It's consistency that does. And so I know in my life, like I try to really focus on the consistency, but as you said, that's like the unsexy part. It's not fun just to like do the same thing every day, get 1% better every day. It's fun it's fun to like get this cool idea and then like double down and give 110%, but then like 6 weeks later you've burned yourself out because you're like, oh, now I'm sick of this thing and I'm going to switch gears again. And it's like, well, I guess you can like rinse and repeat and do that forever, or you can just build the house brick by brick over and over and over again, which I feel like, me personally, I don't think that's fun all the time, but my personality would be practical enough to feel like that's what I have to do.
Yeah.
And it's
No, I
just
think
like,
that's a
it's
really,
just
I
part of
like
it.
the consistency. I think that's so, so true. And what is the other saying? Like
Yeah,
an overnight success in 10 years, right? You don't see all of the work you
absolutely.
put in to launch something that actually makes a difference. But yeah, the consistency
Hmm.
is huge. And I think that, like, piggybacking off of that, you can launch other endeavors, but if you already have that consistency proving to your customers or to the people that hire you, whatever your business looks like, that you are a trustworthy person that's going to do your best. You may not be the best in the business, but they know they can expect the best from you and an honest try, then they're going to keep coming back no matter what that endeavor is. But I think, as I don't know if you guys feel this way, but it's almost like a GPA, right? It takes a long time to build a really good GPA, and it takes one bad grade to drop it in a heartbeat. So I think, showing
Hmm.
up for people, that takes a lot longer to prove that trustworthiness. But if you get one bad apple and that word of mouth spreads, that kind of goes like wildfire, and you have to pay attention to it, because people love, it's our nation and it's our culture right now, unfortunately, that people love to just cling on to those negative things, and that's what gets spread around, the drama, the whatever. So being aware of that, especially in the businesses that we are in the Western world, it is such a small, close-knit group that it can be really important. But I think it's also true, like you said, that you both kind of have aspects of ideas and logical. We all have things that we're more passionate about. And I think the people that are more passionate will generally have more ideas. And then the other person that's maybe doesn't know as much about that area will be kind of that logical kind of I don't know, person to just throw ideas against a wall and see if they stick or not. But it's good to have that balance too, Joe. And I'm glad you're an engineer. My mother-in-law was an engineer, so I can't do that kind of thinking. Doesn't work very well for me. Math and me aren't great.
Yeah. Well, it's I heard someone talk about this. They were comparing professional golfers, and I don't know all the guys' names, but there's basically one who's like always like they were comparing golfers who are like one is an engineer, like he's the same every time, and he it doesn't and he might win or he might lose, but it's going to be the same every time. It's just the pressure's on everybody else because he's going to be where he's going to be. And then the other guy is like the artist, and he can like have these really high highs and like play out of his mind, but then he can like fall on his face the next day. And it's like, well, there's pros and cons to both, because it's like not a lot of people want to go out and get a beer with the engineer, but also not a lot of people want to like give a bunch of money to the artist if they don't know how it's going to work out in the end, right? So it's one of those things you can't be, especially if you're doing something like you are a maker or you're training horses or doing whatever, you can't be completely devoid of passion. You're not supposed to be a robot. But that, to me, I just feel like the people, everyone we've talked to on here that's like truly exceptional at what they do, they have separated themselves with the consistency, not the talent.
Yeah.
Right? Because the talent people, there's just like so many stories of like flashes in the pan. And a lot of times it'll be self-proclaimed too. Like Chaz Weldon. We've had Chaz Weldon on here a couple times. Saddle maker. I think he's a really good saddle maker. An incredible amount of detail goes into his work. And he'll be the first one to tell you, he was like, I was like, when we were all starting out, I was not the best by a long stretch, but I just kept making saddles and kept making saddles and like doing his deal. And my goodness, like he's very accomplished because he just got all the reps in and built brick by brick by brick. And yeah, that's how you get there, in my opinion.
No, I think we all will have shining star moments in our careers. But if you're the person that only lives to be that shining star, that bright light, like you said, flashes in the pan, that's usually what gets kind of that hot media attention. They might be the people that go viral, but then you also might not hear from them. It's like the one hit wonder bands, right? Like, do you want to be the band that it consistently creates that good music, or do you just want to have one good song and then that's all that you're ever known for? So I think, there are some people that maybe that does it for them, but it's not really my end goal at the end of the day. I would like to do this for a long time and be someone that people can, depend on in that area. But no, it's not as sounds like none of us are going to be the viral, the the ones making the crazy headlines. Maybe one time, but not all the time.
Good point. Yeah, if On the Move makes any viral headlines at this point, it's not viral. We've been doing it for quite a while already. So
Yeah.
change gears a little bit. I think of the podcast, you were talking a little bit about where you live, that you're down there, kind of the middle of nowhere, Oregon, and you mentioned something else. You said jewelry for other women who kind of live out in the middle of nowhere and want to wear something that they can enjoy. Joe and I, we're both married guys. I think we both are always looking to understand the female nature more. That's one that I find is interesting. The dynamic between women that like to live, in the city or in the suburbs or out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there's women in this interview with this lady that like studies wolves, right? She was living in Alaska or something by herself and like loved it up there. And then you have women who, like my grandmother, if you turned her out in a field where you couldn't see anything besides trees around it, she'd freak out. That's an interesting dynamic. And I think men are similar, but maybe men just try to hide, that part of their for a little bit more. You just get along with your surroundings. I don't know. These days, men are, a little bit more, I guess. When it comes to making jewelry, can you talk a little bit about is your process for designing a piece of jewelry? And do you jewelry that you think other people will enjoy, or do you make jewelry that you enjoy? I guess you just hope other people have the same taste.
So good questions, and I'll answer a few different things. First, like women living in the middle of nowhere. My husband always joked, he's like, I thought I was going to have to find a woman that had more hair in her body than me to live out here in the middle of nowhere. Like, be tough enough to make it. And it's so funny when I first moved out here, probably for the good like year and a half, I always got like the head tilt. People are always like, how you doing out there? Like, they really worried I was on like the verge of a mental breakdown because we're so far out in the middle of nowhere. But honestly, I have always loved it, but it does take a different sort to live in the middle of nowhere. I think that you have to have a pretty strong sense of self confidence, and independence, because you do a lot of things on your own, right? Generally, like my husband's out working all day and I don't see him till the end of the day, right? Like, you have to be qualified enough to kind of maintain many different areas and interested in doing that, right? And if you're not, that's totally fine, right? But it does take a little bit different personality going into it. So I think just being aware that there's going to be many hours that you are on your own and going to have to figure things out. And in my case, I'm kind of just ridiculously stubborn that I'm going to figure out how to freaking make it work. I don't care if I'm by myself and it's way too heavy for me to lift. I'm going to figure out how to get this lawnmower loaded in the back of the truck or whatever. But those kind of things, I think, just come with the territory. And I feel like I have a very, very nice life and comfortable life. You read about these women who, did all kinds of amazing things many, many years ago, and they didn't have running water, no electricity, had 17 children. Like, those to me are the real heroes. And we're just kind of piggybacking off of their success. But as far as creating jewelry for people that tend to live a little bit more like my lifestyle, when I first started doing silver work, I was definitely more eclectic and definitely, a lot of one-off pieces that were really kind of attention grabbing because they were so different. And I think that helped me get a little bit of foothold in the market. But it slowly, for a long time, I never kept anything that I made, which seems really silly now. But I would go to town and people, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm a silversmith. And they're like, oh, did you make that? And I'm like, oh no, I actually have nothing on that I made. So it kind of clicked one day. I started creating things that I was passionate about wearing myself. For the most part, I would say 85% of my life is spent in the middle of nowhere, that I maybe see my family, my in-laws, and my husband and children in a day, and I don't see any other soul, right? So the jewelry I create brings me joy while I'm working, right? While I'm making more jewelry like it, I'm wearing it, I'm enjoying it. I can go and brand calves in it. I can go and rake leaves in it, like whatever the day is calling for. It just simply brings me joy. And I think it brings that a little bit sense of femininity to a landscape and to a lifestyle that can be devoid of those aspects if you let it. I'm not saying you have to bring femininity into it, but if that is something that is important to you, you absolutely can. So creating items that, one, hold up to kind of a tougher lifestyle, I would say. We're not always easy on jewelry. We're getting blood on it if we're cutting a calf, right? We're getting mud on it, or cow crap if we're doing chores, like whatever that looks like. It's tough enough to hold up to that, but it's also pretty enough that we can wear it to town when we actually get to go to town. And that might just be a grocery run, because that's really the excitement of my town runs, but it still brings you joy in both spaces. So yes, making items that I was passionate about, that passion translates to customers very easily, because I'm just naturally excited about wearing it, and they see me wearing this stuff constantly. And so it just makes it easier to be like, oh, that's something that I could actually see myself wearing and that would hold up in the lifestyle that I live. So hopefully that answers your question about women who live in the middle of nowhere.
Well, that makes sense. I guess that being out there, you would probably do more things, kind of brighten up your day or make you enjoy your life in little aspects, things around you. Like the notion of know what you mean. And I think in general, like in the cowboy culture, we tend to like care about our gear, but also like care about our clothing and care about it in a way that want it to show care to other people. Like, you want to enjoy it. Like you were saying, you might, like if you're wearing jewelry, you might cut a cow open, or you might, bleed out an abscess or something. But you might also just be going to town. And it's interesting, especially for us, because I've been here on the East Coast for like about 5 years. And most stores you go into in the middle of the day, they'll ask you, they'll say, oh, where are you going? All dressed up. And you're like, all dressed. And like, you can be wearing kind of a raggedy shirt, jeans, But maybe if you just have like a decent belt on and your shirt's tucked in, and it's just like a few little things where you've taken the time to like look presentable, but it's the same presentable you would be if you were showing up to lunch at a branding. You're just like you took a moment to just straighten yourself a little bit. But people like today, uh, yeah, they'll notice it and they'll wonder why you're dressed up. And you're like, well, I'm not dressed up. And I have always wondered about that. But listening to you talk about perspective, making jewelry and wearing it and having it be something that's usable but also enjoyable makes me think maybe that's part of it. Like when you're riding horses, kind of working by yourself, and especially in the horse industry, like you're around other people, but a lot of what you do is more of it's kind of a scene thing, you know, and you set up your life so that you enjoy it a little bit more. And then when you go to town, maybe other people notice that and they go, oh, there's somebody who like got dressed on purpose this morning, really has certain items that they like and care about person, and it stands out over somebody who just like a consumer of the world versus like someone who is a consumer of kind of their own lifestyle. No,
It
but I
comes
just
down to
think that's an
self-respect
interesting
a little.
thing.
Yeah, I think it comes down to self-respect. I know what you're talking about. Like it's so funny at home, I wear like the exact same thing. It's usually overalls and like a basic shirt, but I always have jewelry on. But when I go to town, like I love clothes. I love fashion. I'm like any basic white girl, right? I enjoy those things. And I do try to put, attention into it when I go into town and you see I think it makes you feel better. So like even if literally most of the time I go to town, it's like a Costco run and a doctor's appointment for a baby. Like that's generally it. But if I can feel a little bit better about myself, it makes the whole day go better. And I really think even when I'm at home, like if I don't even, comb your hair, put it up, do something, you just kind of feel like a slob. And I don't think you do your best work in any aspect. So the same as you guys take care of your gear because it not only makes you feel better and makes you look a little bit better, but also helps you do your job better. I think just that self-respect and care for items around you is important. I call myself a valuist. It's not an actual term, I don't think, but um, I I'm not a minimalist. I have many things in my house and my home and on my person that I love, but they're things that either have a purpose, right? Or they just simply bring me joy. Maybe it's just a silly little quail figurine, like whatever it is, but it brings me joy and I do value its presence. So I take care of it. And I think that's something that I was taught growing up because I was in a maker life and a maker home. Handmade things and putting care and attention into items was really important. So I'm not saying I'm the best housekeeper in the world, but I do try to value things because I think it's a reflection on how you respect yourself as a person as well. So I'm glad, Ben, that you wear a shirt that you tuck in with a belt when you go to town. Good for you.
Doing it
Okay,
now
good.
that I have approval.
Yes.
Growing up, because it seems like like your childhood really informed a lot of the things. Appreciate. How was that modeled to you? Because some kids, they'll grow up in a household where like their household is a little different than every other household, but instead of wanting the thing that their parents presented to them, they kind of rebelled a little bit because they're like, why do we do all this weird crap? Why are we always making our own wallets or whatever? Why can't we buy one at the store? Um,
Want a Velcro
your like,
wallet?
how did your parents kind of model their life to you guys? And did they have real expectations for you as kids, like little jobs or responsibilities, or was it just kind of like, hey, this is our life, and when you grow up, you can do it too if you want?
So I would credit my parents. Both of them were fantastic at never pressing, never pushing that we had to be in the trades at all. And I think that was actually the reason why me and my brother are both in a creative space now. So my brother does graphic design. And he's one of those people that's just good at all of those things too, which is incredibly frustrating, right? You see those people and you're like, gosh, dang it. But I think that is the reason why we did pursue those creative lifestyles because it wasn't necessarily pushed on us. Now, we always had jobs. Bored in my household was a cuss word. We were not allowed to say I'm bored. And we knew very early on, like we never said it because as soon as you said it, you got a job. And you weren't also, my dad was really big. You weren't allowed to ask what the job was. You just had to say yes. And then you had to go do the job. My brother tried to say no one time Notice I said one time. It didn't go over well. So we always had jobs. Yes, we were always expected to do things. And a lot of it wasn't the fun jobs. Like one of our jobs was we do like wax molds for different parts of like spur components, right? For rowels and the shanks and all that kind of stuff. And you work over top of this spinning machine that you pour hot wax into. It enters the mold, it captures the piece, and then you send those pieces off to be to a casting facility that turns them into metal, right? So me and my brother were working there. Of course, there was no AC, and it was California, so it's like 104, 105 in this little like hut with hot wax. We also never wore shoes because obviously, why would you do that as a child? And so like those were like jobs that we were expected to do and did do. And so there was many things that no weren't fun, but I think because mom and dad were so great about kind of putting us in those positions and doing the unfun jobs, it just gave us a good work ethic that you could still have fun while pouring wax in a ridiculously hot room. And we did. We had a lot of fun doing it, and we still remember it to that day. But yeah, no, they never pushed us on it. And honestly, one I think thing, not a regret, but I wish I would have spent more time at a younger age just soaking up some of those things, because you do take it for granted when you're around such talented people and you don't really know any different when you're a kid. You don't always kind of put the time into kind of watching and learning when you're younger. So I didn't start doing silver work till I was a junior in high school. I told my dad that I wanted to start engraving, and he made me do the same cut for 3 days. That is just leaning over a graver over and over and over again before I was allowed to do anything fun. But it was really hammering in those basic skills, so that I could be more proficient when we moved forward. But and I think also he was trying to weed out, like we've been talking before, that like flash in the pan. Like, is this something you actually want to pursue? Because you got to
Mm-hmm.
dedicate a lot of time to it to get better at it. So I think that was something that, yeah, they never pressed on us that we had to do this. My dad and mom were actually really big on us getting further education because my dad didn't go to college, my mom did. They were really big on that. And even though we maybe didn't necessarily use our degrees in the sense of like, I didn't become a physical therapist, we still utilized other aspects of that time in a positive way. So I credit that to him because I think I've seen a lot of people, especially in the lifestyle like I grew up in, that you did have a home business and you were homeschooled. That's a lot of time around your immediate family members, right? And if you push too hard, it's a pretty natural thing to want to rebel against it. So we've always been really close with our parents, and I think they gave us a lot of autonomy like as children, and that we got to explore kind of whatever we were into, and we weren't pressed super hard that we had to do this. And that created a deeper desire to do it when we got older, because we realized we could do it in a way that was our personalities with that like the skill infused, but we still could put our own spin on it. That was always welcomed. It wasn't you have to do it this way because this is how we did it kind of thing. So I do got to give my parents a lot of credit for all of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, that's honestly really impressive because it sounds like, what didn't happen at your house right there. It sounds like no one ever, I realize people left, but it sounds like no one ever left. And to maintain that ecosystem and then you coming out of it saying, oh yeah, I'd go hang out with my parents some more. Like, that's really impressive to me.
God bless them. I do. I love them, and I never felt like I went through that like rebellious stage, because I think they just made life so much fun. Like we just got to do so many cool things. Like we just honestly enjoyed being around each other. And because we lived, kind of middle of nowhere, we could still get out and get our own space, but it was just something that they really made enjoyable to be part of a home business. And like I said, not every job was a fun job. But at the end of the day, like still sitting down as a family, having dinner and talking about the day was very, very important. And yeah, I would like to raise our children in that same kind of way, that you can be your own person within kind of a family group that is really close. And I think that's something to strive for that I will have to work on.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did it work out post college? Like did you know your husband at that point? Were you married coming out of college, or like did you leave college and think I'm going to go be a maker now? Like, I guess the part we kind of have gotten to hear about what your day-to-day is like now, and then kind of your growing up. Can you fill in kind of the piece where you start, you know, working with silver on your own, and then the Be a Maker school becomes part of your life?
Yep, absolutely. So no, I was not married when we graduated college. My then boyfriend, Levi, I met him at college, which was a great thing that came out of college, right? A lot of times you go there and you meet your mate, right? So I had decided that I didn't want to pursue physical therapy as a career. I think it was the summer before senior year, as you do. I knew that I didn't want to live in a big city. That was never really a calling for me. And I do think that I was like, you know what? If I'm not passionate about this, I probably don't want to spend multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars on grad school if it's not something I really want to pursue anyways. So I talked with my, then boyfriend, and he's a fifth generation family ranch where we're at in Oregon, and he was coming back to the ranch. I knew that all along our dating time, our relationship. And I was like, you know what? So what if I move back, but I live, and they had this little house in French Glen that they were really generous to let me live in. And I lived in there for 2 years before we got married. Cause in my brain, moving to the middle of nowhere, becoming like part of a family ranch that I had never done before, and trying to run a business and getting married was like too many life changes all at once. And I was like, that could go wrong. Like, let's maybe take this at a slower step. So I lived in French Glen again. That's 20 miles away for 2 years. And it was so funny. My mother and father-in-law, they told us after we got married, they were like, we were honestly concerned, like if you guys were still going out, because Levi is such a hard worker. Many of the times, like he never really came down very often. They're like, man, he's not like, most boyfriends are spending all their time at the girlfriend's house and he's just working his butt up off at the ranch. We're not even sure if they're dating anymore. But I think it was honestly such a good thing for me and him to figure out how to both do our lives together but separate
Mm.
in the same place, because that works for us in our relationship, because he knew, like we both knew he was going to be many hours that I'm by myself and he's going to be by himself, but we still are coming together at the end of the day. So lived in that little house for 2 years, and that was really where I think my school of hard knocks kicked in, right? I'm trying to do silver work full time to support myself, to pay for groceries, live out here, pay rent, pay for fuel, all of those kind of things. And that was really when a lot of big learnings happened, because I was on my own and I felt every failure very significantly, because you don't have this lump sum of money coming out of college that all of a sudden you're just going to start this new career. So I think that was such a beneficial time for me to grow as a person, and for me and Levi's relationship, because it's almost like in those 2 years, we kind of went through the things that you would in a first year of marriage. We went through it then. So the first year of marriage was like, it was a breeze, man. It wasn't a big deal. So it made me way more comfortable to, once we got married, those 2 years later, then I moved up to the family ranch, right? We live right as a little family compound. And it was a really good change, because I'd already spent that time and kind of got used to the community and, involved in things, and try to put down a little bit of roots myself. Even if they were just little seedling roots, they were something, so that I could come up here and be part of a
Mhm.
family and still be my own person as well. So that's how it kind of started. It's so funny, when I was by myself though, I really think that my productivity was terrible, because there's no one else that you are, responsible for. You don't have to make sure that there's dinner on the table at a certain time. You don't have to take food to a branding. You don't have to, whatever the day looks like. There's just way less responsibilities on your shoulders. And not that that's a bad thing. That's just, it's a life stage. So the more and more things have been added to my plate, I think God has given me more and more just quality of handling those things, so that I actually can get all of those aspects done in life. But taking it slower for me was a really good thing. So we were dating 4 years before we got married, which was a great time for us. And then just as moving up to the ranch, I'm not needed every day on the ranch. We have people, that work for us, and I am in no way a super puncher, right? I do think I can be a valuable member. I can help, rope at brandings, but I am in no way a phenomenal horsewoman or cow person, anything like that. And I know my limitations, and I'm okay with that. So I like to be valuable. I may not be the most value, but I can be helpful in whatever scenario we're in. So then just started, keeping doing my silver work on the ranch, and then, just helping with the family as well. And then that slowly became with Be a Maker School. Now I really have like divided attention between like family ranching life, Nevada Watt brand, which is my silver business, and then Be a Maker School as well. And I have people that help me with Be a Maker School, behind the scenes assistants that have been working for me for years, and I could not do it without them. Madeline and Jamie have been instrumental in its success, and its carrying on success. And I knew that from the get-go because I had done business on my own. I'm like, listen, I know I only have so many hours in the day, and I still want to be a wife and a mom and a sister and whatever that looks like, that I need to have some people that are helping me get this done successfully at the end of the day. So that's kind of how it looked post college. Yeah, lived in the middle of nowhere, and then moved even further into the middle of nowhere, and then just continuing to add to our life. And yeah, but I feel very fortunate because we're a family ranch. Like, we all work together. There's 3 brothers. And my father-in-law is still working every single day, and he outworks all of us hands down. And so we all live very close. But again, finding a family that you can be your own person, have that autonomy, but within a family group, is pretty rare, and something that you do have to work on intentionally as well.
Yeah, absolutely you do. Well, there's a lot of things to touch on in there. It does make me chuckle. You were talking about how your time management, you felt like wasn't as good when you were not beholden to anyone. Like, I go through that now. So my wife's a judge, and she'll like go judge a horse show for the weekend. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, I've got a free Saturday. Like, I'm going to get a bunch of horses rode and then work on this little project in the garage and do this and do that. And then I look up and it's like 3:00 in the afternoon, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm worse when she's not here. But in my mind, I was like, yeah, I'll just get all this stuff done because I won't, get pulled off into like a honeydew thing or over here or whatever it is. Yeah, I think that happens to everyone, but it is impressive to me, folks that can, you sound like you grew up in it, but to have this good relationship with your in-laws and foster all this. And honestly, it sounds like you displayed an immense amount of maturity and kind of knowing yourself to understand, like, okay, I need to be here for like long-term success. Because you get to, I mean, it sounds to me like you got to be your own person in the community, really, before you just became part of, oh, now someone from California is a part of that family now.
Right.
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 And that's huge, because now I assume you feel like you can, like, even though you want to be a part of your husband's lives and your in-laws' lives, you can feel like you can operate as yourself in this new environment, as opposed to like being the addition.
It makes me think of, I don't know the type of trees, but I know they're very prevalent in like English forests. But you are this very strong tree that spreads out roots. They're deep, but they also spread out to other people. And I think you hit the nail on the head that, because I knew moving to a family ranch that had been here, I like to say, God made the earth and then they moved here, had been so established in the community. If you didn't have a strong sense of self, you could kind of morph and get maybe just swept under by all of what that family is, which is not all of it is amazing, right? They're wonderful things. But I think to have that long-term success, like you said, you've got to keep that autonomy of who you are as a person, so you can stand alone in like, but with people. I think that's really important. So yes, you're exactly right. People got to know me as me before I became part of the family, even though they knew, I was here because of the Millers, which I'm so grateful. But again, you still got to keep your own kind of sense of self so that you can be successful. Because I think that's actually what I've seen from having people, come work out here. If you come and you kind of just forget who you are as a person, you just don't find a lot of joy in being in the middle of nowhere and find a lot of things that you can do, because there's a never ending list of things that you could do. But once you just kind of, if you just morph into this other person, those things just kind of go away. Like, that passion just goes away. So I think it was very important. And then I got to have those relationships with people in the community on my own before we even became, part of the family, which was very, very important and something I am very grateful for. And I don't know if I'm glad if it comes across as maturity. I was just like, that just seems like that could blow up if all of those life changes happen at once. So let's take it slower. And maybe we're just ridiculously slow in our dating relationship. But that was hugely beneficial for me and Levi's relationship. Yeah.
Wow. Well, let me follow up with one more thing on that too. It's impressive to me the way you paint it, that you feel like this has been such a successful transition, because you also strike me as someone, I don't think there's a lot of like generational ranching dinner tables where they sit down and they're like, okay, everyone, who wants to discuss their sense of self tonight? Right? Like the to me it's like a much more practical conversation a lot of the time, which but it's important to have that stuff because it's one thing to be able to live, but it's another thing to have life worth living, right? And I just, to me, seems really impressive that you can be in a community like this and have like a very artistic attitude towards your life and how you approach things. And that has worked with the backdrop you were in. So like my aunt, my mother's oldest sister, she's been a professional artist all of her life, like watercolor artist. And that's how she made her living. And I know she ran into times like her husband was a state trooper. And so she ran into times where, his family, who it's like law enforcement, and they're an old family from like Southern Appalachia, they don't have a lot of like, let's talk about our feelings and our sense of self type conversations, but they all love her. And I'm kind of getting a like similar vibe, but was that ever difficult to navigate, or maybe even something you thought of, or did it just kind of all fall into place because you and your husband communicated so well?
So let me just make sure I clarify this. So we definitely we don't have the after we've done the day of work, if we're eating with family, we're definitely not talking about those kind of things. I think usually those kind of conversations are actually easier with more strangers and the people that know you the best. That's where it comes into like you're just going to have a normal conversation about the day, and generally like it's going to involve some stuff we did today, but not really like that highfalutin like what are your dreams and aspirations. And I think I'm definitely kind of the weirdo in the family that likes doing all of these things and has artistic and like this kind of different kind of mindset, not in a bad way, but like if you can still be that person, but still show up as a family member that loves and values everyone's differences, that's where I think success lies. I don't feel the need that they have to, want to be involved in every single like business aspect I do. But because we all support each other at the end of the day, it allows me to have the freedom to go and pursue those things, if that makes sense. So I'm definitely, we're not,
Mm-hmm.
the mothers are not a feeling family. Definitely not, but they love and support each other in such real ways that it again gives you that freedom to go and pursue whatever kind of things make you happy. So I think maybe
Mm-hmm.
I've never really thought of it before, but I think that's actually where some people might have a hard time. Whereas if you feel like you have to be involved with every family member's thing and care the same level as they do, then I don't think you're really going to find success. But if you can
Mm-hmm.
show up for ways and when you are there, be 100% there for them, it may not even be something you're super interested in, but you're going to be there. Like that's where success lies, that you can still have this separate kind of autonomy of things you work on, but still to show up as a family member is a big deal. So I think that has helped. I give my husband a hard time all the time because he braids rawhide and he's phenomenal at it. And I tell him that all the time, but like trying to make money as a rawhide person can be very, very difficult because things are just, they're so time intensive to make string and to make quality string and then to braid it. And people don't value it as much because they're like, oh, it was just a dead cow to start out with. And so like the business side of that, like pricing your work, we always have discussions about, and any married person knows what the word discussions means, but it's a good thing. So I think those differences in all of our family is what actually does make it successful. So no, I wouldn't say that we're the family that's going to have those deep feeling conversations. They will come up, but in a roundabout way. My father-in-law, we give him a hard time, but he's a narrative style speaker. Like you'll ask him a question, and I'll take it 30 minutes to answer, like tell a story to answer the question. You may not actually get the question answered, but we're going to learn a lot more about other things before we get back to that. So just, yeah, making sure that you have a strong sense of self so that when you become part of a family that is so close knit, has been here for so long, that you can still stand alone in that family is, I think, really important. personally.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, and yeah, the support and accepting without feeling like we have to all pull in the same direction all the time. And yeah, that's cool. And I think that's a really healthy way to think about that. And I know a lot of successful and altogether happy ranch families. And then I've also been around some ranch families that it's like, man, I don't know that anyone likes each other here, right? But we're all just like shutting up and doing our job or whatever.
Right. I think
So
I have to give Gary and
that's
Michelle are my
awesome.
mother and father-in-law, and I have to give them huge credit because they had the dream of building these. We have a few ranches, but building the ranch, I'll just say the ranch as a whole, because we run it them, together. They wanted to build it to a point that if all three of their sons wanted to return and raise families on the ranch, that it was large enough and profitable enough to be sustainable for them to come back. Not many families have that aspiration because a lot of people want your family members to come home, but there's not really much of a future to raise a family there. There's just not enough. We all know that groceries are dang expensive right now, right? And there's just not enough to support a whole nother family. So I have to give huge kudos to them that was really a dream of theirs. And I would say it's a dream that they've been successful at because all three boys are at home. Two of them, we have families and are here and invested. And as far as I plan on, like, we will be here. And that makes me very, very happy. And then it's something on our hearts that we want to do the same. If our children want to return, I'm not saying they have to, but if they want to return, how do we make it into a place that they could actually find a hope and a future at as well?
Mm-hmm. That's a good goal. I like that.
No, I'm glad you shared all this because I think that'll really help some people, especially when it comes to inserting yourself into a situation. Some time to think about it first. And like you talked about, the way you tried it out first. Because I can think of a few people right now, industry, that have kind of done that. They've inserted themselves into places where, it seemed like a great idea, seemed like if they didn't take it up right away, it was going to go away. And then a couple months into it, you know, it's just a burning ship. And then you
Right.
got to go do something else. But I think that's something that's not talked about enough, that when you when something's meant to be and it really is a good thing, and if that's what God has for you, still be there in a couple months. Or if it's meant to work out, be okay. You don't have to just into a situation without looking first. And I think our culture's been kind of served this idea of like leap before you look kind of thing, and you just got to go for it. And it's true, like you do have to do it. But I think people take, the Nike logo, just do it. Like people take that as like just do it and don't even think about what could go wrong. No, just do it is the action part. You've done the homework, prayed about it or talked to your mentors or felt out the situation. After you've done the work, now you just do it. But don't just do it before you've taken the time to assess the situation. So I think, especially coming from you, really good message, and something, I mean, I'm even taking a hard listening to you, that hey, to like take your time, sure that a situation's going to serve you, because it's going to serve the people that you're hoping to help. Because in the long run, if you're not in a healthy place, you can offer anything to somebody else. So
Right. Well, it comes
thank you
down
for
like,
all the stuff that you've shared. Really good stuff.
hey, you're welcome. I'm glad something of it made sense. But it's like the oxygen mask, right? Like you have to secure your own before you can help others. If you're not taking care of those things personally, you're not going to be a great husband. You're not going to be a great horseman. You're not going to be a great maker. You've got to pay attention to those things and make sure you don't, like, there will be days that, of course, we let those slide. And thank God, our partners and our family give us grace to have those crappy days. But in the long run, you need more positives than you do negatives for it to be a success.
It's funny because that example scales all the way up to you were talking about. Like they could want to offer something to their kids, and they could want their kids to come home and have a great life on the ranch. But if they haven't like set up their life in their ranch so that it has room for them, you can't offer it to them. And that's no different than taking care of your mental health and putting yourself in a situation where offer something. So I think a great note to end on. This has been an awesome podcast. One thing I do want to say, and Joe might have a few more things to say too, but before we go, also I want to say thanks to Joe for carrying our podcast for the last few episodes. Busy and haven't been able to make it to a bunch of these. And I just want to publicly say, like, thanks, Joe. You've done an awesome job. Appreciate it. I'm glad I made it to this one. Because Nevada, we haven't really like met, but at the last, the Brannaman Pro-Am, I think my wife and I stopped by. We weren't married yet, but we stopped by and saw your booth and your little baby was crawling around and stuff. So
Yes.
we see you now that we've talked on the podcast. Point of introducing myself.
Yes,
But,
that we want. And she's definitely.
I'm glad I
not
made it to
slowly.
this.
We're like running everywhere.
Is
now.
she walking?
It's a lot harder to handle now.
Running. Yeah. Is she
Yes.
riding horses yet?
She loves to ride, and she's still small enough that she rides obviously with people, but she doesn't like being held. Like, don't put your arms around me. Like, I must be an independent woman. I always laugh. She has my stubbornness and my husband particularness. Like, I'm the stubborn one and he's the OCD one. So that poor girl, she's got spice in all different areas. But I would love to see you in person again, Ben. Yes.
Yeah. I probably need to buy some jewelry at some point too. So.
There you go.
Time of the year.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nevada, for taking the time to talk to us today. If someone out here is finding out about Be a Maker School or your business for the first time, what's the best way to look those up? You want to plug those before we stop recording?
Yes, for sure. So Be a School, we do quarterly open enrollments. So we launch all of the courses are open for enrollment on January 1st, April 1st, July, and October. So it just kind of allows us to have like a group of students going through at a time. So all of our courses are closed right now, but you can get on the wait list for any of them. And they'll be open January 1st, starting the new year, which I have a lot of hope for some other reasons, but we won't make it political. Anyways, so January 1st, you can get on the wait list, but it's beamaker.school is our URL. It's not .com, beamaker.school. We're Be a Maker School on Facebook, on Instagram. And we have courses in silversmithing, engraving, rawhide braiding and leather braiding, cinch making, leather tooling, shat making, equine photography, and the business of making. So a lot of different areas that you guys can learn with Be a Maker School. And then as far as my business, it's Nevada Watt brand. It's Nevada W on Instagram or nevadawatt.com for the website. And yes, Ben, you're right. It is that time of year when you need to get into a woman's brain and try to buy stuff that she will like. And I can help you do that if you guys need to find a Christmas present for your wives. I would love that. That's where you can find me. And if anyone is ever in the middle of absolute nowhere, Southeast Oregon, we're kind of like one of the only houses out here. So knock on one door, ask for the Millers, and you'll be able to find us.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We're going to stop recording, but don't hang up just yet.